the American founders invoked our Creator 4 times in the Declaration of Independence. 4 times. How times have changed, but you know what? Now they're changing back again. Just remember that.
Good evening and welcome to Metro Focus. I'm Jenna Flanagan. That was President Trump speaking over the weekend at the Values Voter Summit, the annual conservative conference organized by the Family Research Council, a group labeled as an anti-LGBT hate group by the Southern Poverty Law Center. Also addressing the conference were ousted White House advisors Steve Bannon and Sebastian Gorka, who brought the House down with a nationalist message and a warning to opponents from both parties. More on that in a moment. But first, the latest on the escalating war of words between Mr. Trump and retiring Senator Bob Corker, a key Republican who has accused the president of undermining Secretary of State Rex Tillerson's effectiveness, especially when it comes to China and North Korea. In an interview with the Washington Post, Corker, the sitting chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, said, quote, "You cannot publicly castrate your own Secretary of State without giving yourself that binary choice." The tweets, "Yes, you raise tension in the region and it's very irresponsible, but it's the first part, the castration of Tillerson, that I'm most exercised about." It was just the latest salvo in the increasingly personal battle between Trump and Corker and the one reportedly bubbling beneath the surface of the GOP. All this is playing out as President Trump takes direct aim at President Obama's signature domestic and foreign policy achievements, the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare, and the Iran nuclear deal. Joining me now to discuss it all is political analyst Ellis Hennigan. He writes the weekly Trump's America column for Metro. Ellis, welcome to the program.
Hey, Jenna, good to be with you.
So first, I want to start with just this very strange argument that seems to be playing out in the public, because we're reading tweets, we're seeing press conferences. Is there any sense that there's communication between President Trump, Secretary of State Tillerson, and Senator Corker anymore?
It may not be done. Let me say this to you right off the bat. It is never a good thing when people are debating whether the Secretary of State has been castrated or not. Whichever side of that argument you fall, the mere fact that we're having it is not good for Rex Tillerson, that's for sure.
With this tension that exists, do we have any indication that Secretary Tillerson has come out several times and said that he's not going to address certain rumors, certain things that have been said in the public, but it still seems like there's a lot of tension between the two. Is it just the president and Rex Tillerson, or is it the president and other members of his cabinet as well?
Well, no, it's I think pretty much everybody in the cabinet. I mean, every one of them is trying to figure out how it's going to work when you work for someone who is quite as impulsive as Donald Trump is. Just think about all the people that he has both publicly loved and loathed over these recent months. The Attorney General, the Vice President. I mean, the list just, frankly, it's easier to think of people that he has had these complex relations with than those who've avoided it entirely.
Well, then what does that say? There's always been a lot of talk on the part of liberals and progressives about, the president should be impeached. However, there's also now been talk, people suddenly have become aware of something called the 25th Amendment, and whether or not that would play into it, considering how much tension there seems to be between the president and his own cabinet.
Yeah, but in both cases, I don't think the political oomph is there yet. First of all, the members of the cabinet are always free to resign, and very few of them have done so voluntarily so far. And as for impeachment, I mean, don't forget, Republicans control both houses of the Congress. Any impeachment to get anywhere is going to have to go through both of those. And as long as Republican legislators in Washington figure out, hey, listen, we may think the guy's a loon, but he is doing some stuff that we like, I just don't think it's going to get up and running yet.
Okay, well, before we get into some of the stuff that they like that he's doing, can a government function when there's this much dysfunctionality within it? Is this workable long term?
I guess that depends where your bar is. I mean, we're a big, powerful country with, thankfully, some some outside controls on some of this stuff, the courts, and yes, Jenna, even the media. So, you know, we're still here.
Okay, yes, we are still here. That, I guess, is the new bar that we're working with. Okay,
the new
so
bar,
I do want to
exactly.
pivot to a little bit more of a concerning topic, and that is the president addressing this family values group over the weekend. He, while he was campaigning, made it a point to say that he was going to be supportive of the LGBT community, that he was going to be a advocate, if you will. Is this a pivot, or is this something that was always in place with at least the GOP and perhaps Trump's platform?
Well, one of the things that we've learned in the Trump administration as compared to the Trump campaign is that a lot of these policy decisions, and maybe I'd call them policy impulses, really have been turned over to just the, more, call it the Bannon wing of the Republican Party, the more socially conservative, more a populist wing of the party. And it's almost as if the president has subcontracted a lot of that stuff out. Never in his previous 70 years of life has he expressed a lot of these views. But now that he's in Washington, that does seem to be the moment of the day. One of the stranger relationships, by the way, is that evangelical community and Donald Trump. The notion that they see a godly man in him is one of the things that has me scratching my head.
And now turning from that to the recent changes that the president has made to either threatening to pull out of the Iran nuclear deal or eliminating the federal subsidies for the Affordable Care Act for the insurance companies. Why is it that this administration, the one thing that they seem to be able to move forward on is undoing the Obama-era legacy? Is that their only platform? Why is that so important to the GOP?
Well, don't forget, it was a unifying concept for Republicans for 8 years, and they made a bunch of political gains off of it. They might have disagreed about a lot of things, but they all agreed that Barack Obama was perfectly dreadful. Where it's gotten complicated, though, Jenna, is when you start talking about, okay, so what are you going to replace it with? It's a whole lot easier to swing that wrecking ball through the Iran deal or through Obamacare than it is figuring out, okay, so what are we going to do instead? That's kind of where we are right now, I think.
All right. I want to turn back to the family values, the Values Voters Summit, and address the comments that we heard from Gorka and Bannon. Now, they're both no longer within the White House, but they definitely were there and had very prominent speaking roles and were very popular with the audience.
But there's a time and season for everything. And right now, it's a season of war against a GOP establishment.
The left has no idea how much more damage we can do to them as private citizens, as people unfettered by being part of the U.S. government.
They are a very effective spokesman for that part of the party. I mean, the real question, I guess, is are folks like Gorka and Bannon, are they more damaging inside the administration or outside? And I don't think we know that yet, but boy, those battle lines have sure been drawn.
Okay, well, moving forward then, is there anything on the horizon that you at least see with either the nuclear Iran deal or furthering the repeal of Obamacare? Is there anything else that you can see on the horizon?
Well, yeah, we ought to keep our eyes on Congress right now because that's where the real work has got to be done. An awful lot of Republicans, I think, are very nervous about pulling these health care payments back that support health care for moderate income people. What's the impact of that in their states and districts, many of which voted for Trump in the election. So I would keep a close eye on that. Let's see whether Congress does something to restore those payments. There are already some efforts ahead. And what the heck do you do about the Iran deal? I mean, even if you agree that it's not the greatest agreement ever, would you rather just end it and let Iran proceed with its nuclear ambitions unimpeded by anything? How do our allies overseas react? All that stuff. Trump handled the slogan. Now it's Congress's job to clean up the mess, and I'll be watching how they do.
All right, Ellis, always a pleasure to talk to you and get some clarity on all of the chaos from Washington.
Good luck with that, huh?
Thank you.